What was it like in the early days? Have you got any sort of war stories?
So there's lots of times where it got squeaky bum, and there was actually the first Christmas totally wiped out. It was about 12 o'clock Christmas Eve, and I got a call just as I was about to leave from the bank manager saying, Andy, you've just gone over your overdraft. There was a few times where I was using my own credit card, and I was running my own credit cards through the business to get cash into the business to have enough to pay the salaries. And then, we've got COVID-19, which has kind of been a reminder that tough times are sometimes never far away.
We're back, Series 2, thanks to our sponsor, Shafrazul, who's also fighting entrepreneurs and fake gurus. Go check his channel on YouTube, link in the description.
On this episode of Not Another Dickhead with a Podcast, we've got Andy Alderson, who is the CEO of Vanarama Group, and Vanarama being the best known brand within the group. So cheers for joining us, Andy.
No problem. Good to see you, Mike.
Yeah, so you've been mentioned a few times to come on this podcast. So obviously I've seen your stuff, I've heard your jingles.
Vanarama, Vanarama, they're the ones who need to go.
You can't really forget your jingles, can you? You know, on the radio and stuff. So it was a case of finding out how you got started, why.
Yeah.
And you've obviously had massive growth, you've won a lot of awards. So why car leasing, why van leasing? What made you get involved in that industry?
Well, look, I was selling cars since 1992, and do you know what? It's actually really easy to sell vehicles. I used to sell advertising before that, and that was really hard. I was selling something intangible. Customers didn't even know if they needed it half the time. I'll try selling consultancy services. When customers come in to buy a car, they know they've got a need for a car, right? And I knew there was a lot of people making very decent money selling vehicles, and they're actually pretty rubbish. Selling cars is really easy. You have to be pretty bad not to make some money at it. And I was pretty good at it.
What was the jump then from going from just selling cars to then obviously the online stuff?
So I was running a dealership for a family business in 2003. We got a batch of vehicles that we had to sell before the end of March, or they were going to be crushed. It was a blowout deal. I took all the stock, but I didn't realize that they had to be paid for in 90 days. So I took all the stock off Citroen's system, and I had to get rid of them quickly. Luckily, I was an early adopter of the internet. I set up a one-page website, very basic, put a free phone number live, and sold 275 vehicles in 6 weeks from a little sleepy village dealership in Chalfont St Giles. And for that one quarter, we were one of the top selling dealerships in the country. We never saw a customer. They were all ordered online, delivered to the customer, and that was where I knew my future was selling vehicles online with a monthly payment.
Yeah, so what, the penny dropped then and you realised there was a huge opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. And that was 2003. That was 16, 17 years ago, and it's even more so now. So
then you left there. What was it that made you want to leave there and go work for yourself then?
Well, I was working for a dealership, and for a manufacturer owned dealership, and I just realised that for me to be able to do what I wanted, I needed more control, and I wanted to be able to sell every type of vehicle. And the overheads then were big. To own a dealership, you've got your kind of £2 or £3 million showroom at that point. Then you've got to pay for the signage, which is expensive. And it was just too restrictive. I wanted to do things my way. I wanted to be more transparent. I wanted to sell things online. And you just couldn't do that. It was really difficult to do in 2003 under the guise of a dealership. So I set up a used car dealership to start with, because the lease companies wouldn't take you on unless you had trading history. And then once I had a couple of years trading history under my belt, I went to the lease cos and said, look, now I've got trading history. Will you take me on? And that's how I kind of came to being leasing.
When you would work at a dealership then, so were you running that dealership?
So I started off selling finance in dealerships. Then I went to work for a family business, which was the dealership that I was at in 2003. I was there from 95. And by the time I left, I was the sales director running the sales operation for 2 dealerships.
Because what I always find, I don't know if you've got this, you must get loads of questions now because you run like a successful business. So I always get asked by people, how do you learn how to run your own business? So where would you say was your learning done? And then when was at the point where you thought, I know enough here to go and branch out and do this on my own?
Yeah, it's a good question. The reality is running a business, when you start, a small business isn't that difficult really. You've got to have product market fit. You've got to know that what you're selling, there's enough customers for it. And as long as you're fairly decent at sales and marketing, and you know how to go to market and talk to customers, you can kind of hire your weaknesses, if you like. So if you're not very good at admin or accounts or payroll, you can hire an accountant to do that. Running a business isn't that difficult when you apply some best practice. I think for me, when I learned was that period when I realized that I was running the dealership anyway, so I knew the kind of how the dealership worked. And I think that period where we sold those vehicles online was just the final convincing for me that I should strike out. I think I was always going to do it, but that was the final convince to say, yeah, get on and do it now.
It mirrors my journey, really. I learned on someone else's watch until I felt like, oh, why am I doing this for someone else? I think I know enough here to have a real good crack at doing something. What was it like in the early days? Have you got any sort of war stories or anything that went complete disaster or went tits up when you first started Vanarama?
Oh, yeah. So I remember the first day, I kind of, the spreadsheets looked great, the business plan looked great, but I had 3 employees the first day. I walked in and thought, shit, I got 4 mortgages to pay now. And how it actually works. So I'd done cash flow projections, but because I was selling loads more than I planned, I was filling, it took 3 or 4 days to get vehicles out once you'd sold them, but I was filling this empty spaces quickly. So I was kind of, you can overtrade. So I wasn't managing the cash flow as well as I thought I would. So there's lots of times where it got squeaky bum, and there was actually the first Christmas totally wiped out. It was about 12 o'clock Christmas Eve. The kids were ringing me. My ex-wife was ringing me saying, where the hell are you? And I got a call just as I was about to leave from the bank manager saying, Andy, you've just gone over your overdraft. And at that, usually if that happened, I'd look at what was coming in from finance companies, look at what was coming in from credit card companies for customers who paid a few days before. And I kind of look at it and say, actually, we're going to be all right tomorrow. But I didn't have an opportunity to do that. So totally wiped out Christmas for me. And we had lots of those types of moments where cash flow got squeaky. And then credit crunch, that was particularly bad. You know, we were laying off people because credit crunch kind of...
Like 2008, around that time?
2008, yeah. Well, at that time, we were predominantly selling pickup trucks. And what I've learned is in sticky times, when times are tough, like pickup trucks are the ones that get hit hardest. Because they're more expensive to run. So our kind of business ground to a halt overnight. So I had to lay 12 people off. But there was a number of times, where I was having to scrape money together at the last minute to pay the salaries. There was a few times where I was using my own credit card and I was running my own credit cards through the business to get cash into the business, to have enough to pay the salaries and then pay myself back when the money came back in. Which I wouldn't advise anyone doing, but that was kind of needs must at that point. So yeah, lots of squeaky bum time. And then, we've got COVID-19, which has kind of been a reminder that tough times are sometimes never far away.
I was going to ask you about COVID-19, but I'll ask that in a bit. That thing you've said there about paying staff with your own credit cards and before you pay yourself, I think a lot of people, before they go into business, they don't see that part or that risk. I've seen a lot of content recently, especially with people being furloughed, where they've said, I think sometimes directors and company owners are looked at like rich, greedy, like capitalist or whatever it might be. But the reality is sometimes you're the last to get paid or the least paid person in your business at times, especially in the early stages, I've noticed.
Exactly.
It's I don't think most people really appreciate until they're in that position.
They don't. And I used to say to my former employer, look, I look after your money like it's my own. I was lying. I didn't realize it. I thought I did. It's not until it is your own. And my house was on the line. I had everything in the business, and it still doesn't leave you now. No matter how much success you have, you're always on. You're always working. There's always a worry. And and even when you get to a bigger business and you become CEO, what you find is by the time problems come to you, they're usually big. Whether it's a complicated HR issue or a supplier issue or a customer issue. It never leaves you. And the problem is, your team, your staff, they always expect you to know the answer.
Exactly that.
And you don't. That's the thing. But there's a lot of pressure on you to know the answer and kind of pull a rabbit out of the hat and make things work. It can feel a little bit unbalanced sometimes, but that's just the gig, and hopefully the rewards pay off at some point. But yeah, it can be a lot of pressure, particularly in the early days.
Your growth's been really impressive, and obviously you said it. You started with 3. Was there 4 of you originally to start?
Yeah, 4 including me. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was similar to ours, myself and Ian's in our last business. But now, what you're around? You're over 200 staff now, aren't you?
Yeah, 205, 206.
Yeah, and I've seen you've won numerous awards. So how did that happen then? Was that something you deliberately set out to do? Did you want to be recognised? I've seen you Sunday Times 100 Best Companies to Work For. You've won like 3 years in a row. What do you think it is that you do that makes you stand out or makes you a great place to work?
Yeah, we've been in the list 3 times. Listen, I think when I was working, I've worked for a lot of bad bosses. I've learned from the worst, if you like, and that's normally the way it works. I've worked for the bullies, the egomaniacs, the narcissists, the misogynists. I've been in all sorts of environments where I've seen how not to do it. And earlier in my career, I worked for a big PLC. I was doing 6 days a week, 12-hour days. And I just knew that, and I didn't enjoy it. It'd be all right if I enjoyed it, but I realised that I had to at least enjoy it if I was going to spend more time at work than I did with a family. And then when I had my own business, I realised it was much easier, or it would be much easier for me to achieve what I wanted to achieve if the team actually looked forward to coming in. So I worked really hard at it. And when I hire my leadership team or managers, I always make sure that they do the same thing, because people want to feel valued, they want to feel appreciated, they want to feel developed. And look, it's expensive and it takes time and it's complex, but there's a bigger cost if you don't do it. The average tenure for employees around the world is about 2.6 years. I've got over 20% of my employees being here more than 5. Yeah, really it does work.
Do you think that's a lesson then to anyone that is thinking about their own business? They need to think about looking after their staff early, best environment in place for them to flourish. Because I think sometimes that gets overlooked, doesn't it, by a lot of businesses?
Yeah, it does, unfortunately. Reality is it's not that difficult to do it. You just want to treat people like how you want to be treated yourself. And like I said earlier, it's much easier to achieve what you want to achieve if your people are behind you. And the best way to do that is, look after them.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I also saw that you won Best Leader in 2017. Yeah, is that one you're proud of?
Oh yeah, it was brilliant. But it wasn't so much about me. And of course, it was great to go up and get the award. But it was much more. I do the easy part really in terms of the communication, the strategy, keeping people aligned. I bring people in from outside the business and outside the sector. I stay close to them to make sure that they've got what we're trying to achieve and they've got our culture. But yeah, I was really proud of that, particularly for the effort that the team have put in to win it.
Now, most people would have heard your jingles before. We'll probably play one on the podcast. How did that come about in terms of the marketing? And then also, I want to talk about the sponsorship of the National League.
Yeah.
How did you end up sort of involved in that? Because to me, that's where I know you from. And I was wondering if that, do you think, was a sort of pivotal moment in your growth as a business? Because it seems a good fit for what I would imagine your ideal client to be, or your ideal customer.
Yeah, you're dead right. So I'd spotted an opportunity to go on TV in 2013. We were ahead of budget. We had enough money to put together a 3-month campaign. It was low budget. I mean, 50 grand a month is tiny, really, for TV. But it was something I wanted to do because I kind of thought, we've got something here. We've got enough to have a go at it. And I kind of started to realise the importance of brand. So we did a TV campaign. We were very measured. We were on Sky Sports News. Because we had a lot of insight and there was also a lot of instinct. I'm quite good with that from a marketing perspective. I'd worked in advertising before I went into sales. So I kind of understood marketing anyway. But what happened was, I knew van drivers like football. So we were advertising on football. And then I was getting lots of inbound from people selling sports marketing. And there was someone trying to sell me darts sponsorship, all sorts of different events, perimeter advertising of football matches. But what happened was, in terms of how we got the football deal, we had it was Sheffield United at the time, and I don't know if it was them approached us direct or a sports agent. They'd had a sponsor drop out. It was a local car dealer in Sheffield, and I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 years now, but it was 25 or 50 grand. to sponsor the shirts. And Sheffield United were League One at the time.
Yeah.
And we looked at it, and they looked like they were going for promotion that season. We thought it could be good for us, a bit of TV. But we kind of looked at it, and I thought we wouldn't get much out of Sheffield, other than that, what we got in Sheffield. But I checked it with a guy who was trying to sell me the dart sponsorship, and he said, "Yeah, you're dead right. It's okay. It's not a bad price, but other than what you get in Sheffield, you won't get much." He said, "But I have got this opportunity," which was the then Conference League. Now, to give you an idea, at that point, our business net worth was £700,000. The size of the ticket for this was 3 times that. But we looked at it, and we had 3 days to make a decision. So it was a big call. But when we looked at it, when we saw the assets that you got, was 68 clubs with boards around the ground, a page in every club's program, 1,246 games of the season, a page on every club's website, the fans talking about you every week, 300 to 500 tweets every day mentioning Vanarama, because Vanarama National League side Hemel has signed the players, sacked the manager, released tickets, there's been a goal. And then the big thing is you've got people like the BBC reading your brand name every week, and BBC don't read your brand name unless you're in trouble normally. If you had to buy all those assets individually, it'd probably cost you 5 to 6 million quid. Yeah. So we kind of said, look, it's huge. It was an all-on-red moment. It was either going to work or it wasn't. It was going to fail spectacularly or it was going to pay off. And in fact, thankfully, paid off mega. I mean, we doubled the business in a year and just kind of kept on growing. And not just in sales. If I want to talk to the CEO of a major car manufacturer, I can now pick up the phone to them because they've heard the brand. I have tradespeople around my house, and 90% of the time they've heard of us, and it allows us to sell other products. So it's been really big. It's been massive.
Yeah, massive. I would say from me, and I love business. I love looking at people's stories and stuff, especially like that seems to be the moment where you run like a national scale, obviously, but it's just like it's been exponential since that point, really, your business. And I didn't realize you got so many assets. So was it an easy decision to make then, or did you, you said you had 3 days to make it. What was it like when you sent the money? Did you think, shit, what have we done here?
Yeah, it was one of them. It was a huge moment. It was like, and remember the night I had to give the decision on the Friday morning. It was actually my stag do for my second wedding, and I didn't sleep much. And I made the call to the chairman and said, "Okay, we're doing it." And I got in the minibus. I got picked up. We were going to the races, and I told the lads, and they couldn't believe that we'd done it, because I wasn't able to share it with anyone until we kind of signed the memorandum of understanding or whatever it was. But it was huge. But when I told them, they were all saying, "God, that's huge," and they made me feel like it was an even bigger risk. Do you know what I mean? So it was big.
Yeah, they'll be on the wind up anyway as well, because it's your stag do. You probably couldn't afford a round of drink. Shitting yourself.
Exactly.
What's good as well is obviously now the National League's on BT Sports. You've kind of had another bump as well. Is that true? Same thing? Because obviously I see the games on BT Sport.
Yeah, definitely. And then, funny enough, thankfully the league were able to complete the season with the playoffs, and BT showed the playoff final a couple of weeks ago, August the 3rd, I think it was. And they had a bigger audience for that than they did the FA Cup. Obviously it was mainly televised on BBC, but it was huge, and our brand was everywhere on it. It was great, really great. And we get a boost on the website every time they show a match. It pays off in so many ways. And
so, what, you've been doing that now for 5 years, is it?
A bit longer, actually. This is our 7th season coming up.
Yeah, I've just sponsored a local football team, nowhere near on that scale. So Winnet Wolves under 10s, we've just signed their shirt deal. We've got the podcast studio, which is a new business that we've set up in Warrington. And 400 quid it costs. I've got a hoodie and I'm allowed to go to all their games for free, which I went to anyway because my son plays in goal. So I think you've got a better deal out of your sponsorship deal than me. Getting on to COVID then, obviously yours is an online business. Does that mean it was easier for you, or has it been harder because obviously no one can, if you sell a lot of sort of trade vehicles and stuff, everyone else has got to slow down their business? Has that had a big impact?
Yeah, so we only sell new vehicles, but our supply chain is dealerships. and they completely shut down. So we, in the first month, we dropped our revenue 90%. So that was pretty huge. That was a huge drop, because we kind of had everyone working from home. Sales dropped 90%, revenue dropped 90% in that first week or two. But then once things started kind of settling, if you like, once people kind of got over the panic stage of getting control of cash and getting people secure and getting working from home set up, we started selling. We weren't expecting to really sell anything, but we still sold just under 1,500 vehicles during lockdown. But it wasn't until about June when we could start delivering again. So yeah, in terms of impact, it was pretty big from a sales and revenue perspective, but we had lots of positive stuff as well.
We've been forced to do different things. I was going to say, so how's that impacted how you run as a business now? Are you going to let working from home be more of an option? I know a lot of businesses didn't really do it beforehand. So did you allow working from home and now it's an option, or?
No, so we had a couple of instances. So I've got some of the team who, I've got a guy in Norfolk, a guy right down in Kent. We've got about 4 or 5 who used to come in 3 days a week and work a couple of days from home. And perhaps stay overnight one night here to make that easier. And I must admit, I was a bit of a naysayer. I was a bit kind of probably old-fashioned. I like getting into the office, getting my uniform on, and being able to see everyone. But I was walking around the building, actually, funny, in about January, February, thinking, Christ, we've got this lovely 20,000 square foot building, but we were 85% capacity, and we only moved in 3 years ago. And I was thinking that I either need to buy another one or a bigger one in a year's time or so. We've got a big car park here, but I was also renting 2 additional ones, about to do a deal on a third. Now, with working from home, I can't see when I'll ever need a new building. I only need 1 car park. And in the last month, we've broken all records, and people are only working 40% of their time in the office.
Yeah, that's one thing. I would say it was similar to you. I know I always thought if you let people work from home, I'm not saying all of them, but there's like some people might say they're pissed, so they might not get as much work done. But what I find is, in a weird way, sometimes being in the office is a distraction, because there's so many other things to distract you, get involved with, talk to. Well, the amount of products that we've been putting out, pieces of work, it's exactly the same. But now we've got staff that don't have to travel in for an hour, travel home for an hour. They seem happier. So the actual output's been the same. I don't know how many hours they're spending doing it, but if we're judging people just on results and output, I think it's been a massive impact for us, and probably loads of people watching this, really.
Yeah, same here. So, and look, our productivity's gone up because of the reasons you've just said. They're not commuting, they're not getting distracted. The thing we've got to be careful is, because we've got great culture here. So I think we'll always have a blended approach. And what we've got to do is just make sure that when people are in the business, because you need collaboration, you need meetings to kind of download, you need training. And you also need the kind of banter. One of the best things about some working environments is the banter you have between departments, and that's actually when some innovation can happen. You need the coffee machine conversations. So we just got to make sure that when people are in the business, we almost squeeze the life out of the culture, if that makes sense, and make sure we get them. It'll definitely be a permanent feature. And for me, it's been a revelation, because I was, for instance, I'd love to have a place down the coast at some point. But I was kind of looking at thinking, well, I'll go on a Thursday night, perhaps take Friday off, come back on a Sunday. Now I'm thinking, actually, I'd go for a week and work from home. It's been a revelation for the whole business and everyone in it.
Looking back now, what advice or lessons you wish you had known back in 2004 when you started Vanarama that you know now? So what sort of advice would you give yourself, or to anyone else thinking of starting a business? What was like the key thing that you think you'd ever wish you'd known or done differently?
Well, it might sound obvious, but learn what customers want really quickly, because you go into business thinking what you want to do, but if you don't know what customers want and how they want your service or product, you're not going to do the best job of it. So we've got a value which is, if it's right for the customers, right for us. So that's really important. Talk to customers, take risks. Sounds obvious, but you've got to take risks, but accept that you're going to fail with some. And accept that failure as part of the process. And you've kind of got to fail fast, learn fast. Identify weaknesses. So I used to do everything. I used to do the sales, marketing, admin, payroll. Admin's not my favorite thing. So I identified my weaknesses. I hired to cover them. And then whatever your strengths are, just try and do more of it. And that, if that means hiring people to allow you to do more of your strengths, then get on and do it. And I suppose the biggest lesson for me has been the value of brand, because one of the reasons we've, so like everyone else, we slammed the brakes on in marketing with COVID. And ordinarily in a recession, the brands who market the most will come out the strongest. And there's lots of case studies. But when you hear brands, everyone, Coca-Cola turned off marketing because this was a very different recession. But we were still selling because of our brand. We've just gone, we also sell insurance. We've just gone live on insurance aggregators. And ordinarily, you need to be in that top 3 position to get traction. But we're finding that we can be in the top 6 or 7 and still sell. And we're something like 300% more likely to convert because of the brand, because people have heard of us. So, the importance of brand. And it doesn't have to be what we've done. You can have a small business and still build your brand locally. You can be a self-employed contractor and still build your personal brand on things like LinkedIn. So, the brand is really important.
Yeah, we work with a lot of, so that's what I Am Productions, that's what we do. We make content for people that want to build their personal brands, and we do graphic design for them and stuff like that. And we think it's so much easier when you do stuff like that. So it's interesting you said that. Weirdly, your colours there, orange. We've got a client that also wears orange, and he said just changing from black polo shirts into orange was like one of the cheapest and easiest way to stand out. Like, people always remember, oh, you're the plumber that wears orange. And he's like a self-employed guy. And he said as soon as he did that, it's like easy done branding. Whenever he goes to trade events, people recognize him straight away. And there's little things that I think all businesses can do, and it does help massively. So I've got questions from LinkedIn now, if you don't mind answering some of them. Yeah,
sure.
Some of them are crap. You know the standard of question on LinkedIn, it varies, let's just say. But they are. Chris Taggart said, whenever I see this company, I can't help but sing in the tune. So was that important for you, getting that jingle?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So I was spending 50 grand on TV advertising, which is tiny. It's really tiny. So you have to try and make it as memorable as possible. And we hit gold with that because it's a tune that's used quite a lot in football chants. That worked really well.
I've got, which is your favourite Van Helsing, Dick Van Dyke, or Ruud van Nistelrooy?
Oh, Christ. Well, Ruud van Nistelrooy plays for Man United, so he can't. Probably got to be Dick Van Dyke.
Have you had a famous Van at Newcastle?
I don't think we have, I don't think we have.
So again, it's the same question about the catchy tunes. Do you believe your major success was down to the catchy advertising songs, or were those years of modern day torture a waste of money? So some people don't like the tune, it's modern day torture.
No, it was part of the success. I don't know if it was or the only reason, but no, people still sing the tune to me now. Yeah, I can be in a pub having a pint and I talk about Vanarama and they start singing the tune. So no, it's definitely not been wasted. And
if you could drive any car or van, what would it be?
Oh, good question. Probably a DB11.
Oh, you're too posh for me. Too posh for me. I thought I was posh when I got on BMW 3 Series. And that's it, really. I've got no more questions. Yeah, so cheers, Andy, for coming on today. And hopefully we will see you. Oh, in fact, I've got one more question.
Go on.
My football team, Cheshire Cheese, newly formed. We have played 6, won 2, drew 2, lost 2. I've made a sensational return after 11 years out. Do Vanarama want to sponsor the front of the kits?
You're breaking up there, Mike.
I told them I'd ask. I told the lads I'd ask. So at least I've asked. Cheers, Andy. Thanks for that.
No problem, Mike. Pleasure.